Hello and welcome to the big picture. The suicide blasts at the Pakistan side of the Wagah border on Sunday evening has raised several questions on the growth of terror networks and their intentions. The blast, which killed 61 people, all Pakistanis, and injured several right on the Indo-Pak border, is causing serious concerns too. Though at least three terrorist organizations are supposed to have claimed responsibility for the attack, the picture is yet to become clear. Wagah, which had earlier been assumed to be a safe place where the crossing of both goods and people happen between the two countries, has now come under a shadow. Has the theatre of terror shifted within Pakistan? What is the message this blast sends to both Pakistan and India? Can the two countries work in tandem to avoid attacks like this in the future? How important is the cooperation now between the two countries? And more importantly, is it possible? We will discuss all this today with Vivek Katju, former ambassador, Rana Banerjee, former special secretary, cabinet secretariat and a security analyst, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, director, Society for Policy Studies, and Saikat Datta, editor, National Security, Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Katju, having this kind of a blast on the Wagah border, isn't this a shocking thing? How do you look at this?
Look, I look upon it as an act of domestic terror in Pakistan. Yes, this is the first time when an incident like this, at least in my memory, has taken place so close to the border. But then we've had Pakistan-sponsored terrorism in India for more than 2 decades. So,
how does it make sense that within Pakistan on the border, killing their own people?
Well, all Pakistan domestic terrorism kills its own people. So in that sense, it's not new. Yes, the venue is something which is to be analyzed. Why was this venue chosen? And I think there are no definitive answers as yet. Certainly, I don't think the Pakistan authorities have come out with any answers at the moment. But to look upon it as anything else other than an act of domestic terror in Pakistan, it will be misleading.
Banerjee, you think that, do you agree with Mr. Katju? It's just an act of domestic terror, there are no signals, no messages to India. How is India involved?
No, I don't think India is involved immediately. I would tend to agree with what Vivek has said. If you go by the claims made by the three splinter fractions of the TTP, it's been a while coming, but such reprisals were expected after the military operation in North Waziristan.
So you're linking this to, because there are reports saying that...
Yes, there is a possibility. The location would suggest that it could be one of the factions, the Jamaat-ul-Ahrar faction, which has also declared its allegiance to the Islamic State,
but it is
trying to show that it is veering nearer to
But it has not
India.
claimed responsibility, so...
It has. There are three factions which have claimed: Jundullah, the Jamaat-ul-Ahrar,
that is
and the Khan Saeed faction of the Masouds.
Jundullah is supposed to be an Al-Qaeda faction.
No, it's a faction closer to Hakimullah.
Okay.
And earlier it was involved in the Peshawar church blast in September 2013. But beyond that, there is nothing more to directly link it with action here. Among those arrested are, one young boy from Multan. That is one suggestion. Jundullah also has a sectarian link-up, anti-Shia. But beyond that, there is nothing to suggest that it could be that compared to the other two factions. Whereas Ahrar has, as you would know, a person by the name of Umar Khalid Khorastani, who is from the faction which is split and is closest to Fazlullah. At the same time, it has Asim Umar as its spokesman, who is believed to be of Indian origin. Hamid Gul, when he came here, he openly went about saying that he's an Indian, though we don't know from which part of India he is.
No, if you're talking of this faction which is close to the IS,
yes,
or which is claiming allegiance to the IS, what is their intention?
Well, the intention is to prove that, they are having linkages on this side or nearer to India so that they can compete for, prominence among the terror groups which want to affiliate to IS. And Jawahiri himself, when he declared the AQIS, that is Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, in the first week of September, one of his aims was to try to take back the spotlight from Abu Bakr Baghdadi back to the old leadership of the Al-Qaeda by demonstrating capability to have some actions in the subcontinent. So, to that extent it is possible. But more detailed, specific criminal investigations about the nature of the blast would really establish which group it was.
Uday Bhaskar? Uday Bhaskar, how do you look at this? Is there a, you think
Girish,
there is an IS connection?
Yeah, I have a slightly different...
IS, Al-Qaeda, rivalry. What is this?
Girish, if I may, I have a slightly different interpretation of the Wagah attack. While yes, it is an act of domestic terrorism within Pakistan, and to that extent one could be cynical and even say it is routine for Pakistan, where such incidents have been occurring with unfailing regularity. I think there's another way of perhaps looking at this, which is that if this particular suicide bomber had managed to breach yet another level of the security cordons, and in the very tragic event that we had a larger number of casualties, that also included the Indians who were watching this particular ceremony or who were congregated there, I think we would have had a very different set of events to be discussing and analyzing. And that is the direction I would like to explore as an analyst, to say that perhaps this was more than just one more domestic incident of terrorism as far as Pakistan is concerned. And that is why, while I agree with Vivek and Rana that we need to get more information, more accurate information, one of the reports that I saw in the Pakistani blogs and websites seemed to suggest that perhaps there was more than one suicide bomber or perpetrator, and that if the intention was to create mayhem that also included casualties on the Indian side, then I would aver that perhaps one of the objectives for the group that was behind this, whichever it may be, would have been twofold. One, to turn the spotlight on their competence, efficacy, whatever you will. And secondly, to advance the agenda, which is to create the kind of politico-military tension between India and Pakistan, and see both the militaries or both the leaderships on both sides expending their time and energy in a standoff, thereby giving these groups the kind of space that they are now seeking, and also maybe advancing the other supra-political agenda that they have set for themselves. So, which is why at this stage I would say that this is not one more incident. The proximity to Wagah offers us certain interpretative possibilities that we should not ignore. Girish?
Okay. Okay, I think that's interesting. Yes, Mr. Katju.
I said this is precisely what the Pakistanis have been saying, that acts of terror in India are perpetrated by non-state actors. Are we going to go down that road? All acts of terror in India
Vivek, no,
have been... No, please hear me out.
1 second, Uday, let him finish. I'll give you a chance.
So, that is my main concern, that the Pakistanis want this kind of a story to go around, that therefore to absolve themselves from any blame for terror which is taking place in India coming from across the border.
How can they absolve themselves of their blame if groups within their country are attacking on the border and wanting to have problems on both the sides?
No, but what have they been saying? They've been saying that the Pakistan state and its agencies are not responsible for terror in India. What have they said in Mumbai?
You are saying that they are responsible. Yes, Uday.
Yeah, Girish, if I may, nowhere am I suggesting that we are absolving the deep state in Pakistan. What I am offering as an interpretative possibility is to say that here is a reality that the Pakistani deep state is investing in certain terror groups, whether it is the Lashkar and the Jaish-e-mohammed in relation to India, the Haqqani in relation to Afghanistan. That is what the Pentagon report to the US Congress says today. This is familiar. All I am saying as an analyst is that if the suicide bomber was able to breach the first level, is it possible that there could be some very perfidious plan where there are some elements within the deep state that are allowing or tacitly encouraging this kind of operation, if you will? After all, we have the example of Punjab Governor Salman Taseer and the fact that somebody within the establishment had actually perpetrated that particular killing of the governor himself.
Right.
Because he'd stepped out of line.
Right.
So there are many, I would say, undercurrents. All I'm saying is that we should not see this as one more incident
of
Perhaps
domestic
there
terror.
is more to it than meets the eye, is my submission.
Okay, okay. You certainly made a point. Saikat, how would you look at this? Do you think it is just another case of domestic terror?
No, I would tend to agree with what Mr. Katju and Mr. Banerjee have said, because if you look at the Pakistani military operation which is happening in North Waziristan, they have been...
No, what are you trying? Are you trying to say that, it was not, it had nothing to do with India, there was no messages being sent to India? Maybe the suicide bomber did not manage to penetrate the security. That was his intention to cross the border. You don't see any such possibilities?
That theory is too far-fetched from my point of view, because to cross the border and attack an Indian asset, when it's much easier to come through Nepal and attack India, why would they try to do it on the border? So I wouldn't buy that at all. And in fact, this is a case of Pakistani terrorism within Pakistan. And
why at the Indian border?
Because it's a good way to get attention. I mean, part of terrorism is to spread terror, and this is a perfect way to get international attention right away, with everybody jumping up and saying that this has happened. So this is and also see, most of the attacks have been taking place in Waziristan, the counter-insurgency operations. And here you have at the heart of Punjab, which dominates the Pakistani military, and you create an operation there. I mean, it would perfectly within the TTPs or any faction of the TTPs to carry out an operation like this.
Okay, Mr. Banerjee, the question, see, you pointed out how the Al-Qaeda recently had made the statement in September that, we are about India and its intentions within India. Do you think that it may be part of that strategy to give a signal that yes, we are on your border?
Well, as a devil's advocate type of thesis, I wouldn't completely rule out what Uday has said as a hypothesis, but we need to have more evidence to sustain this type of analysis. On the other hand, you see, grabbing
as an analyst, as a security analyst, can you rule out this possibility?
Can't rule out.
Don't you have to look at that aspect also?
We would need to look at it, and we would need not to be complacent about any such thing. But it's still a far-fetched sort of a hypothesis. It's more likely that, yes, grabbing of attention, international attention, competition between various splinter factions to show that they are, more effective than others, to continue to have greater attraction for recruits, new recruits. All these factors would be there. The Punjab Home Minister, who is a new sort of a up-and-coming protege of Shehbaz Sharif, he has made a claim that, the outside involvement cannot be ruled out. That is, the typical position that the Pakistani establishment takes of indirectly hinting at an Indian hand. But it's not going to cut much water, because this is something which has hit them directly, and the most obvious conclusion would be that it is the TTP, one of the factions, hitting back. Rana Sanaullah was formerly the Home Minister in Punjab. He has claimed that he believes that this is the work of one of the TTP factions. Now, more investigations are needed to...
Yeah, Mr. Katju. Mr. Katju, the question is, if you are saying that it is a domestic, it's an issue of domestic terror, internal differences spilling out within the Pakistani establishment or administration, who is going to benefit?
Well, look, there are groups within Pakistan who are now locked in a struggle against the Pakistan state. And it would clearly be that they would benefit because it is part of an ongoing strategy.
So if they are involved in a struggle with the Pakistan state, that means the Pakistan state can claim that they have no hand in this?
No.
Would you agree that Pakistan state has no hand in it, or you think Pakistan state still has a hand?
I draw a clear distinction between acts of domestic terror in Pakistan, where, leaving aside sectarian attacks, where it's very, very unclear as to which part of the deep state or others who may have a role in it, because sectarianism is a different issue altogether. But leaving that aside,
this is nothing to do with sectarianism.
but it doesn't seem so, because when sectarian attacks have taken place in congregations of Shias,
Yes.
or the other way around, largely the former. Now, here, where there are factions which were earlier with the Pakistan state, which were earlier used by the Pakistan state, which have now gone against them, when they indulge in these activities, obviously the Pakistan state is not involved. But that doesn't mean that the Pakistan state has changed even an iota of its policies of using some groups, like the Lashkar, for example, against India, or using some groups like the Afghan Taliban as instruments of policy in Afghanistan. And let's be very clear on this. I don't think it's in anyone's interest to give the Pakistanis an escape route here, which they have always wanted.
Uday, Bhaskar, are we giving an escape route to Pakistan? By discussing
No, far from it, Girish.
taking...
I mean, this was the thrust.
Sorry?
I said, far from it. I don't think any of us is providing this kind of an escape route, as you characterize it, because the thrust of what I was saying earlier is that there is a reality which has not changed, that Pakistan has made an investment in terror in a selective manner. And that is a familiar track record as far as Pakistan is concerned. I think all of us on this panel have drawn attention to the Lashkar as far as groups that are directed against India are concerned, which are nurtured by the Pakistani establishment, and in like fashion those groups that target Afghanistan. That is a reality that I don't think anybody is questioning. Concurrently, there is also what you might call as the strategic denial that Pakistan has often practiced. So these are twin characteristics. It's only in relation to the Wagah incident, and since Rana, I think, has used the appropriate phrase, he's talked about being a devil's advocate, I'm saying that as an analyst, I would like to see this as perhaps not just one more domestic incident, but the proximity issue does raise questions, and that is where I am sort of pointing towards, saying that, for instance, the breach of the first cordon itself, I'm sure the investigation, if it is done objectively, will lead to some conclusion or some pointers again as to how did this happen. Was there another suicide bomber or another person assisting the first? Now, what about the Multan arrest? So these are the kind of leads I'm suggesting need to be followed up, and we'll have a slightly better answer. But there is this implication for India, which I would suggest needs to be noted, that if it can happen this close to Wagah, what about the rest of the IB? I mean, after all, India has an objective to ensure that none of its citizens or its assets become the targets of such attack, however they are perpetrated. So I think that would lead us to ask this question, what do we do now?
Absolutely, you know, the implications for India. But before that, Mr. Banerjee, would you like to respond to what Uday is saying?
No, essentially, I mean, I would not see any objection to, you know, being more alert, being more sensitive about the possibility, because the fact is, yes, the violence has taken a shift definitely eastward, closer to our border. To that extent, yes, we have to be more vigilant, more careful, and watch very closely the evolution of investigation in this regard, what pointers it provides. But what I would want to caution against is that we should not let this lead to, you know, projection of, you know, joint intelligence sharing over this instead, or joint intelligence cooperation over this, because this shouldn't be playing into the hands of the Pakistani agencies.
That is exactly the point. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Katju.
No, that you see, you are right. The Pakistanis always believe that there is a common, and they say this, that there is a common terror threat which India and Pakistan face.
You don't agree with that?
Of course not. Pakistan faces a domestic threat which is, unfortunately, of its own making, in a sense. We face a threat which has come from Pakistan. And it will be very, very difficult for me to entangle these two, to now say that, yes, there is a common threat.
Okay, Saikat.
And to just...
Saikat, let me frame this properly. Now the question is that it is so close to our border, they have suffered all right, we have not suffered, but still if the demand, there may be some kind of a international pressure also that, you both should work in tandem if you have to, if you have to avert this kind of things in future. What should the Indian government do?
Well, the Indian government should reject it outright, because let's not forget what happened on the day or just before Prime Minister Modi was sworn in as the Prime Minister of this country. What the ISI did, and we have concrete evidence, what they tried to do in Herat with our consulate, if not for that one ITBP Jawan who fired a shot which helped break the attack, the whole plan was to take our personnel hostage and to use that to embarrass a government when it had not even come into place. So I don't see the ISI or the Pakistani security establishment changing its role at all. And whatever, as Mr. Katju and Mr. Banerjee have said, I mean, these are elements of a Frankenstein terrorist element which has now come back to bite them. And those elements are slowly spinning out of control because of what the Pakistani military is trying to do under American pressure. But I would be extremely cautious about any proposal about sharing any intelligence with them. And we have to appreciate the fact that the threat from Pakistan is not only real, it is much more potent now in the current circumstances.
Mr. Banerjee, so no cooperation at all. There should be no cooperation between India and Pakistan. Terror problems on both sides, but still we'll say you can't do it. Is that what
offers of intelligence cooperation in the past have been, very superficial. And whenever in the period between, Vivek would know, between the period between 2007 2008 when this offer was taken up, whatever information we shared ended up in leading us to dead ends about telephone numbers which were operating from the other side, and similarly inputs about specific locations from where the state sponsors were acting. Whenever such type of information was given to the Pakistanis...
You're talking of 2007, 2008, 2009.
Yes.
You don't think that things have changed in any way?
No, we have no demonstrable evidence of, any, not even a tactical change, although the Pakistan army is now seized more seriously with their own threat, the inward threat of elements like the TTP, which they are tackling in a much more firmer way than under Kiani. I mean, the North Waziristan operation is a serious operation. Now the focus of that has shifted to Bajor, because some of the people have just run away and taken refuge there. So now the operations have shifted to Bajor. The Rahil Sharif, dispensation is much more serious towards eliminating this type of terrorism. Their domestic threats to be eliminated. So after that, what they do with the Lashkar or with the Jaish, we don't have any evidence to show that they are also going to dismantle such elements. If they do, then we'll see.
So, Mr. Katju, we don't need to cooperate to deal with their own internal problem. Our cooperation, you think, will not help?
No. How do we cooperate with them? This is their country. These are assets they created which have turned against them. No. So, where's this cooperation element? And yes, in a larger sense, there are problems which I think the Pakistanis and sections of Pakistanis are also very worried about the IS, the Al-Qaeda.
Exactly.
Now, as far as that is concerned, yes, I believe that there can be general discussions with Pakistan on that, but A, they don't want it. B, the day they start taking serious action against the elements that they've raised specifically against us, that day we can give all these matters consideration.
Okay.
Till that day comes, what do we do?
Uday, how do you look? Do you think that the Indian intelligence agency, joint sharing of intelligence, some kind of assistance to them if they demand, if they are not demand, if they request, you think that is something which is not, the time is not ripe for it?
No, I don't think it's ripe at all. As a matter of fact, here I am totally on the same kind of formulation as Vivek and Rana to say that for us, I don't think there is any indication that the Pakistani deep state, as I refer to it, has gone through any kind of change of mindset.
No, Uday,
as far as India is concerned?
Uday, do you agree with Banerjee that there is some amount of what Banerjee calls as Rahil's, the new army chief's attempts in Waziristan and places like that. So you think, do you agree with him that there is a little more effort, serious effort being made there to bring down or to control these elements?
No, I agree with that. I agree with that formulation that under General Rahil Sharif, the Pakistani military has definitely been acting in a more concerted way against these groups that are challenging the state. That is something that I think the Pakistani military has clearly arrived at the equivalent of a consensual decision. But I want to get back to this intelligence sharing bit, which is, I do want to reiterate this, that for India the litmus will be when the Pakistani state stops nurturing groups such as the Lashkar, or for that matter the Jaish. And I think the professionals can pick up the signals fairly quickly as and when this happens, or for that matter, very soon we are going to be talking about the anniversary of Mumbai, 26/11. I mean, if Pakistan wants to demonstrate that kind of sincerity, I think the Indian side would be able to recognize that fairly soon. But I'm again very cynical about that happening, and I know this is perhaps not the best time to raise this, but the very fact that between the BSF and the Rangers, the Pakistani Rangers went back on whatever they had agreed to and wanted to show up the BSF by going ahead with the flag ceremony again, to me is just one more indication of this basic lack of trust, or for that matter what you see going on in the United Nations just now in reference to the Kashmir issue. So these are all indicators, I think, about what I would call as the inflexible attitude that they have adopted in relation to India. So therefore for us, I think we just have to deal with this. But if I could just close on one thought, Girish,
yes.
I still maintain that even if it is not a common threat, the proximity to Wagah has made us aware of the threat, quote unquote, to India along this long IB. So how do we counter that?
Absolutely.
That is the question I'm trying to
Yeah, that's a question, Mr. Katju.
No, but we've been facing Pakistani terrorism in India itself. If this was the first time when some terrorist act had taken place on our borders
And not inside.
then
we would have had to be worried.
Say yes. But we've been facing that terrorism in India for over 2.5 decades, and now we are worried about what is happening on the border.
And not just India, but also our assets abroad.
And assets abroad, exactly. Not once, but twice, thrice.
So, yes. Mr. Banerjee, from what all of you are saying, what Katju is saying, we really need not be worried about what has happened there.
No, we should be worried.
In the sense that, there is nothing, so...
It's nothing new.
Nothing new.
No.
Nothing.
The fact of such a big incident happening in the proximity of the border,
this is not a new strategy. These are not new groups trying to make a point to India. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, implicit, in fact, in the allegation that the Punjab Home Minister has made is that maybe India was involved. So that is, something absurd, and it will not have any credibility.
Okay, very quick last words, Saikat. So India is out of this as far as, any new strategy is concerned. We have to be cautious as we have always been.
We have to be absolutely vigilant, because what they try to do in Herat has given an indication that this government is not going to change anything, the Pakistani government, and things will be business as usual right now.
Okay, I think on that note, we need to end. It's interesting, as the Bhaskar was pointing out, if there is going to be any change, people like Rana Banerjee should smell if there is any change. But right now, everybody agrees that there is no change as far as the behavior of Pakistan and its organizations or proxies are concerned. We will wait and watch what happens. Thanks to all my guests. Uday, Bhaskar, Vivek, Katju, Rana Banerjee and Saikat Datta. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue, the big picture, same time.